I think we should be proud about having hotel restaurants. And I think having some of these partnerships and, working with great people that stand on their own feet with, their own restaurants and bars, it does change the narrative around people wanting to come and feel, socially acceptable to have, a celebration in a hotel or going to a hotel just for a great lunch with family and friends.
Hi, everybody. You're with Dani Valent and you're listening to Dirty Linen, a podcast about food and the people in it. There is endless topics to talk about. There are so many different ways that we can approach the issues around food, hospitality, dining, restaurants, and of course, hotels. Now, in Australia, hotel dining hasn't had the reputation that it's had in many other parts of the world. If you think about New York, London, Paris, some of the most exquisite and highly rated restaurant and dining experiences are in hotels. In Australia, it has tended to feel like it's a bit of an also-ran. Certainly, hotels are great training grounds for people. A lot of great chefs and hospitality professionals have come through hotels, but it doesn't necessarily have the cachet that it has in many other parts of the world. Is this changing? Today's guest is someone I have been wanting to have on the podcast for a very long time. Ben Creek is the Vice President of Food and Beverage, Asia and Pacific for Accor. Ben, welcome to Dirty Linen.
Thank you, Dani. Great to be here and equally excited to be here after trying to arrange this for such a long time.
I know. Well, you are a very busy person and you are hard to pin down because you're always tripping around the world, especially the Asia Pacific, which is your beat. I mean, you've worked for Maryvale, for Rockpool Group. What is it that it attracted you to the world of hotels?
It's a great question, and I think you kind of sum things up right at the start. I think for me, I'm from London myself, and I always grew up going to great hotels and aspiring to have hospitality moments in those places. And I moved to Australia about 15 years ago, and similar didn't see that, and that sentiment wasn't there about really good, rich dining experiences in hotels. And I've had quite a varied career across many different segments, including restaurants, bars. I was a baker originally, and always came through the kitchens. But one thing stood out to me was the opportunity in hotels. I got a call about 3 years ago from Ennismore, which is Accor's lifestyle division, and they offered me a role. I actually couldn't take that one at the time. We were just having a baby, but then decided that hotels probably was the next moment for me. I'm not a hotelier, and I think I kind of bring the kind of external, influences from restaurants, bars, etc. So for me, it was really about being excited about helping shift the industry along and giving an opportunity to the industry to really kind of be on that global stage, as you said, like New York and London, and how those great experiences across Asia really do evolve around hotels.
What do you think have been the barriers? Like, why hasn't hotel dining and hospitality been, a natural site of excellence in Australia?
I mean, it's a great question. I think, overall, some of those markets, it goes back culturally. And I think going back a number of years ago in Australia, that there were those iconic properties like Sofitel Wentworth, which was the Wentworth back then was, that really exciting place to be. I think overall across Australia, the density of the population probably just isn't as concentrated with as many people as some of those other big cities, which have kind of sustained the growth of those big historic landmark hotels across many centuries. But I think it's interesting. Each city in Australia is very different, and I'm really excited to see some life being put back into hotel dining and bringing those restaurants and bars, not just for hotel guests, but of course those places you want to go to, you want to celebrate. And one thing we're trying to do, and I think we're moving in the right direction, is creating restaurants and bars within hotels that actually serve the community, not necessarily for travelers. Of course, the benefit of having great restaurants and bars and cafes in hotels is it does help the overall occupancy and the price per room, but it's really about giving really rich experiences for the community.
So how do you do that? I mean, perhaps you've got some examples, like why would I be attracted to dine in a hotel in Australia?
I mean, my portfolio is quite varied and quite uh, large in terms of the different scale. We operate kind of 19 brands, everything from economy through to kind of premium, and then they're moving into the luxury space and lifestyle space. So we kind of have something for everyone. But I think for me, it's coming back to the kind of the original reason why people want to go to restaurants is having that sense of community, giving them something in a space where they can come and be, whether that's, that's working, that's meeting people, celebrating. And I think, one thing we are looking at, and we spoke about in another forum, was around coffee. And I think creating that really incredible coffee experience is fundamental for the hotel stay because, of course, lots of people have breakfast with us. But I think, coffee is also a moment of celebration and bringing people together across any of our brands. But I think, more recently, we've been really looking at working with other restaurant groups or chefs. And we've got a couple of examples I can talk through in a second. But I think for me, it's about creating those community hubs where people can come and celebrate. And we're fortunate to be across most states, all states in Australia, and lots of those cities and even regional towns where, it might not be these fancy chefs and, big partnerships that are coming in, but it's about smaller operators that are potentially struggling right now, or maybe it's a baker. And I think we can give them an opportunity to come and work their magic in a hotel space or a hotel environment. And for us, I think it's really just enriching that guest experience. I mean, the guests that stay with us just want to have a really good meal or good celebration or just a great cocktail. And I think we can do that by working with the people that are best in their field.
Interesting. I mean, I'd love to dig more into the coffee side of things because it's such an important one. I feel like if you get someone with a great coffee, perhaps, the first morning they wake up in the hotel, that's a real sign that, perhaps that this is a place they'll want to have lunch or dinner as well, or bring a client back to, whatever it is. Whereas if they have a bad experience, then they're out into the streets, they find a great coffee, maybe they spot somewhere where they'd like to have lunch or dinner. It is such a key touch point. But how do you make coffee better? Is it just, what is it? Is it training? Is it equipment? Is it just an intention? What do you do to start to pull those levers?
For sure. I mean, I know you're a huge advocate for great coffee, and I really respect everything you're doing for the industry as well. Look, I think we serve so many coffees a year. I mean, it's upwards of 25 million cups a year across our hotels and our corporate contracts we have, and then also our partnership with Qantas lounges as well. So we operate at scale, and of course, to get every single coffee right is a challenge and something we're not perfect at, but we do endeavour to be better in that space. So I mean, about a year and a half ago, we started working with a couple of different partners, and first of all, I think it comes back to partnering with the best people, and that's obviously from a quality perspective, and suppliers, I don't like the word supply. I mean, we really want to partner with businesses to kind of ensure we've got the right product, obviously from a coffee bean perspective. And then, of course, then sourcing the right equipment and, making sure we've got equipment that works and it is, consistent, because coffee is all about consistency. And then the third pillar in that is of course, people and training. We've got a lot of, younger people who are coming in without experience in that coffee space. So it's really important that we focus on training them. So I think there's a few parts to it, but what we wanted to do at scale was to start working with some businesses and suppliers that could help, hit a couple of those pillars. So we started working with a number of different roasters. And of course, at that scale, you need to have a partner that can distribute and, of course, supply products at every different level. So we've got a kind of a more broader strategy with one supplier who's got a number of different great brands. But then also, coffee is such a emotive, regional, and a product that people care about so much. Of course, it's similar to wine, but coffee touches so many people, and everyone has their different experiences there. So we did also know that we needed to partner with some smaller boutique roasteries across Australia. So we've got a kind of more broader strategy for, the volume in some locations, but of course, and to your point, lots of guests come into hotels and you check in, and then you'll start looking around where the best coffee shop is around the hotel and not thinking about a hotel as being that space. So for us, it was very important to be intentional, to build those programs and coffee experiences in hotels and lobbies because, it's so important.
It's such a strong signal. Identity must be something you think about a lot. Everyone comes to hotels, everyone stays there. You don't know if they are feeling like Italian or Chinese or barbecue. Is it hard to develop brands for hotels, that are very specific, like whether it's a cuisine or a style of cooking, or is there a need to, go very broad so that you can look after every single guest?
It's the kind of $1 million question and something that I obviously talk about a lot at the moment. I think historically, and maybe that's coming back to the point we made around why hotel dining hasn't been great. And this is, I guess, also a global piece. But I think historically, we try to please everyone in a hotel because of that exact point. So what that means is you end up with a menu that has, a great burger, a pad thai, a steak, and all of those other dishes, which means you've got something for everyone, but with no identity. So it's almost kind of flipping that on its head, and being more intentional around having a very focused, tighter concept. And I think it's sometimes scary for hoteliers to do that because by naturally doing that, you are potentially alienating some customers. But where we've done it well, and you do focus on something and do it well, and it does have a great brand, and it is focused around maybe one cuisine, and a very focused experience, it pays off because it gives you a real talking point and a story for guests to actually come there rather than just eating. So I think it's exciting to see that shift, and I do think it's important. Of course, where we operate, so many different brands at different levels, sometimes you do need those classic dishes, and you don't need to have a super focused Cantonese restaurant in some regional areas. But I think in the CBD locations that we have, I think it's now about being bold enough to have a concept that is authentic and focused.
Well, give me an example of one of those concepts that you're really proud of that you feel like tells that story.
Yeah, there's a few. I think recently we launched an initiative in Australia called Table 4. And I think, we set out to do this because of that exact point. I mean, we were kind of just generalizing different restaurants and cuisines. And I think I wanted to look at things with a different angle, from a kind of a restaurateur angle and more of a restaurant group approach versus that kind of more broader hotel element. So we set up Table 4 late last year in September. And Table 4 is really a collective of internal team members that we have. So there's 4 full-time Table 4 team. And then we've really started to partner with some incredible, creators and chefs and great bar people out in the industry. And the first one we opened was with Giovanni Pilu at Pulmonkey Grand in Sydney, which is a restaurant called Flaminia. And that is, some of you listening may know Giovanni Pilu. He's super focused and an expert in Sardinian cuisine. So it was really taking a restaurant that was, in the middle of Sydney Harbour, one of the most picturesque locations in Australia. The restaurant was broad. It didn't have a real identity, and we really wanted to bring in and create a great story that felt like it was a natural fit for that location. So the concept, and Giovanni and Marilyn created this amazing story around the Flaminia, which is a ship that brought Marilyn's family across to Australia in 1952 from Italy, and docked in Circular Quay. So that the concept is really around, migration and bringing Italian heritage and cuisine to Australia. So it's really looking at those port cities and having food that just feels great and authentic to the location. You can see the ferries coming in, and that food, it just makes you feel like you're transported somewhere else.
Wow, that is so locked in, and I love it, and I instantly want to go. What a great story to tap into. Do you have like a success metric for that around the proportion of client or diners that would be in-house and just drawn from Sydney more broadly?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, across the board, I'd say this is not just Accor, but this is generally, I'd say, a restaurant in a hotel nighttime, you probably draw in 15% of your total guests, give or take. And of course, I think the ambition is obviously to create that community restaurant where you want to come to. I mean, Flaminia specifically, we are seeing probably 60% of the guests coming externally, which is great. And I mean, it's an interesting location. You're having incredible footfall from the cruise ships coming in, and obviously lots of offices, and people going to the Sydney Opera House all the time. But you still need to know where it is to be there. It's just up, looking across the harbour. So it's for us. It's also about creating that brand and that storytelling. And I think, of course, as most people in the restaurant world know at the moment, you can't just have good food and drink and people will come. You do have to invest in really good storytelling around social media. And of course, Instagram now is one of the most looked at channels before people come to restaurants. So it's about having a really good, authentic story online before you've even walked into the restaurant. And I think what that potentially is one of the challenges for standalone operators, because you have to have all of these different elements to be successful.
That is so much to consider, because if you, like how transparent or I guess opaque do you make the fact that this is a restaurant in a hotel? I guess it has to have its own identity as well as be a sort of anchor tenant for the property. It's such a lot to balance.
It's true, and it's funny. I guess a couple of years ago as well, I was when I made the move into hotels, people were very much about creating these standalone restaurants and disassociating from hotels. And of course, I think it does pay to have a separate identity for the restaurant. So it really stands on its own 2 feet. And it, as I said, has an identity, has a story, and it feels potentially like a standalone restaurant. But I've kind of changed my thought on this now. And I think we should be proud about having restaurants in hotels. And I mean, definitely over the past 3-4 years, that is changing. And at probably a pace that hasn't happened for probably 10 or 15 years. And I think we should be proud about having hotel restaurants. And I think having some of these partnerships and, working with great people that stand on their own feet with their own restaurants and bars, it does change the narrative around people wanting to come and feel socially acceptable to have a celebration in a hotel, or going to a hotel just for a great lunch with family and friends. So I think it's changing, and of course it's all of these things coming together that make that happen.
If I think about one of Sydney's longest running successful hotel restaurants, I think of the Bentley and being there at the Radisson. And I reckon I went there like 5 times through that corner entrance from the street without ever engaging with the hotel side of it. I mean, do you think that do you want people to walk through the lobby, feel like they're in a hotel and choose to go to the restaurant?
It's a great point. I mean, every location's different, and there's different nuances compared to where you are. And if there's you have to go upstairs, for example, or up an elevator, which is always the challenging piece in a hotel of drawing people off the street. So I think it really depends. I personally, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to get into the hotel world and push F&B along, is that feeling of walking into a hotel lobby, which is buzzing. You've got people having meetings, you have people, going on first dates, you've got people checking in and checking out for various different reasons. That energy is just electrifying for me. And I think then having restaurants kind of adding to that as well is super exciting. I think there's many restaurants in a hotel called the Ned in London, which opened probably 7 or 8 years ago, maybe more now. But it's in an old bank. So you walk into this massive banking hall, and there's a vast array of restaurants in this lobby. And you walk in and you can just feel this electric atmosphere of moments happening all around you. So I think yes, that's probably the gold standard of what we'd like to achieve. And of course, it depends on the hotel. But I think that community space where people are gathering and having great experiences is so important. And I think if we can add food and beverage, whether it's just a great coffee shop or it's a great restaurant, into those spaces, I think we should.
If I thinking about what you've said, when I travel to a city, I want to feel like I'm part of it. I'm engaging with the locals. But similarly, when I'm in my own city or a city I know well, I love to see who else is there. So I guess this idea of that meeting place, that sort of plaza where people, locals and visitors are gathered, you can feel, that new eye on the city, as well as, being proud of all the people that are coming. I think, there is so much to explore in that space. Ben, you mentioned earlier about, the hotel environment perhaps being a safer space for some, small business operators to try something out. But I mean, how safe is it? Because presumably hotels are subject to the same pressures around cost of goods, cost of labour, decreased spend, world ructions that cause extraordinary disruption in travel patterns. Tell me about some of these pressures and how you manage them.
For sure. Good point. I think for me, of course, and I've worked in many different standalone restaurants and family businesses where it is tough. So I think if there's an operator or a restaurateur or a baker or a chef that is, they have one or two or a couple of restaurants or cafes, I think, of course, all the pressures that we're facing right now, and it's those things you talked about, the cost of labor, the cost of food, literally everything is very difficult to maintain now. But I think where we can come in as hoteliers or restaurateur spaces within hotel areas is that, we have this incredible infrastructure, we have this incredible real estate in these amazing cities or even regional towns, which is potentially underutilized. So there's these, great restaurant spaces or great lobby spaces or actually just event spaces that might not be being used. And for me, there's definitely an opportunity to give more license to mum and pop operators or smaller groups or single operators to come in and kind of work their magic and create these really great, rich experiences for them and for our guests. But actually, we can then remove some of the burden of administration and of course all of those overhead costs which just really stack up. So we are definitely not immune to all of those challenges, and of course the market is as you said, kind of moving up and down all of the time. But where I do think we can come in is help potentially people with great talent and let them do their magic, but actually just let us do some of the hard work for them.
I think one of the things that scale enables in large hotel businesses is to create change. So to perhaps have initiatives around sustainability or inclusive employment. I know that some trainees of a social enterprise that I love in Melbourne called All Things Equal, which trains people with disability to work in hospitality. They've partnered up with hotels. I think it is Accor, actually.
We do lots of stuff, yeah.
Yeah, so that's just so amazing to use that big hotel machine to create opportunities for people who may not have them elsewhere. Like, are there any initiatives that you'd like to point to around, whether it's sustainability, inclusion, Yeah,
I think one of the benefits of working for a big group such as Accor is, we have big infrastructure, big teams that are supporting our hotels at a kind of a corporate level, and so I think with that, it also carries a lot of opportunity, but also we do need to be doing lots of things to support all of those big areas, because I think for us, we are under the spotlight and we are responsible. So we need to make sure from a sustainability standpoint, we're looking after the environment, looking after our team members. I think I'm pretty excited about some of the work we're doing in sustainability around food waste. So looking at lots of the impact we can make there. And last year we reduced our food waste by about 10%, which is actually a massive amount of food, which has stopped being wasted. And this is a global initiative that we're working on. And we also have KPIs around this as well. So we take it super seriously. This is not just a side hobby that we work on. So for me, it's around creating a great impact for the planet, reducing waste, and using systems like Winnow, and there's various elements we do to support. But for me, there's lots of systems we use, but it's actually around the culture of the chefs and wanting them to make great recipes using repurposed ingredients, and there's lots of things, positives and minuses of about having breakfast buffets and obviously producing lots of food. I think we also have an obligation now to help educate guests and try to nudge them in the right direction, not to waste food and not to take too much. And so I think doing that and telling the story around what we're doing is becoming a big part of our strategy. It's another interesting element, and I'm not sure if it's super common at the moment, but looking at having carbon ratings on our menus as well. We've actually got a target to do this, and this is essentially having a menu, and on each menu, each dish would have a carbon rating of the carbon that has been put into those dishes. So of course, if it's imported beef, it's a pretty high carbon impact. If it's locally grown lentils, it's going to have a much lower carbon impact. So using some tools to do this, and again, this is not going to change or force people to make healthy decisions. But what we want to do is give them the information to make those decisions when they're ordering food. So there's lots of other things we're looking at, but I think particularly around the food element, we have such opportunity. One other element we're looking around is being a lot more intentional with our plant forward menus. And I think, again, it's not about making guests be vegetarian or vegan, although I don't like those two words. But what we are looking at doing is training our teams to be a lot more intentional around our plant forward recipes. And I think there's so many great natural cultures around the world that just do naturally great plant forward food, and I think it's not about just removing the animal protein completely, but it's about kind of flipping how we're looking at those portions and having animal protein as a slightly less portion as you would. So rather than having a 250 gram steak, you'd maybe have an 80 gram steak, but also then some incredibly cooked, delicious vegetables that have been smoked and grilled. So the dish on a menu sounds like it's a normal dish. It's not going to freak you out being a vegetarian meal if you don't want to do that. But it makes you feel safe about eating less animal protein, which of course then impacts better on the environment.
Yeah, it's such a tricky balance, I guess, in hospitality generally, but it feels quite acute in hotels, this balance between abundance, generosity, but also, reducing waste, sensible menu items where, no one really needs 500 grams of steak on their own plate. But then you want to be generous. People are perhaps on holidays or they're splashing out or they want to impress someone. It must be really tricky. And I mean, buffets are just can be so disgusting in that way where, no one wants to see an empty tray. However, like breakfast is finishing in 5 minutes. There's just waste inherent in that model. Yeah, I mean, let's talk more about buffets. Like, what are some of the things you can do?
It's interesting. And I think there was during COVID, and I remember lots of stories about the death of the buffet and the buffets finished. But I personally, I like buffets. I think they're great. But to your point, we need to rethink how we're doing it because, people, when they go on holiday or even if you're traveling for business, sometimes you don't have enough time to sit down and go through the motions of having a la carte breakfast. So I think buffets do serve their purpose. I was recently in Thailand last week, and just seeing the volume of people just sitting and having breakfast for 2.5 hours in these resort locations. And I think it's important to give that choice, that variety, and that excitement. But we need to be smarter at it. So, I mean, some of the small things we do is, doing things cooked to order and creating smaller portions. And a lot of this is around how we display with, the right crockery and the right staging and theming. And also just kind of naturally using great produce to make the food look abundant and exciting. But then actually the food, is smaller individual portions that are on there. So it's probably looking at the design of buffets differently. I think we still design kitchens as if it's the 1900s, apart from the space is slightly smaller these days. But I'm pretty excited about, looking at the future with, of course, AI and, what we can do around technology to make kitchens, the footprint better and more efficient, but then also how we do serve food. And I mean, I was talking to someone the other day about, vending machines. And I think, of course, you think of vending machines and doesn't signal great good food or quality. But I actually do think in the future there may be a space for great salads that can be made using technology in certain aspects. I mean, if you look to Japan, they really use that vending is just part of their culture of how to get great snacks. And of course, the 7-Eleven egg sandwich is not quite vending, but I think retail is going to be interesting to see how technology can help improve that as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, everyone's talking about AI. What are some other ways that you're using it in the hotels?
Yeah, I mean, we touched a little bit on the food waste. So AI supporting us to reduce food waste is a big one. So obviously now you can have our scales, which you just put the food in, it takes a photo and it automatically can tell you how many carrots have been wasted and how much cabbage is in there. So that's a big plus, which has been going for a while for us, but I think it's getting smarter and smarter. I mean, in the back end of things, I think, and you hear a lot of at the moment around, will AI replace jobs? I mean, fortunately in hospitality, I feel like we're very lucky that I'm pretty certain that we're going to continue to want that human connection and that hospitality moment of speaking to someone, whether it's the barista or your waiter or waitress. That's always going to be part of hospitality. So I'm very excited about that as we progress. But I do think in the back end, looking at AI to support future planning. So I think in kitchens, really looking at, past data around, the weather patterns, 1 year ago or a month ago, the guest patterns. So essentially adding all of these data points together to make us make smarter decisions on the fly. And I think this is not just about, corporate office teams, but I think in the near future, we'll be able to get this kind of data around, guests that are coming into the restaurants and, the production you should make for a Tuesday afternoon, for example. So I think we're starting to see like lots of the AI tech just giving us more tools to make decisions and hopefully then, removing some of the administration on the floor. I think, we're also starting to look at how we can use AI for reporting, providing data around, cost of goods and labor so our teams can make quicker decisions on the fly.
Yeah, interesting. I'd like to spend our last few minutes talking about staffing and training. How would you sell working in a hotel to a young hospitality professional?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I started as a baker when I was 15 and I'd always loved food and I wanted to be a chef from ever since I could walk and talk. And it was always around restaurants and I wanted to get into Michelin star restaurants. And I did dabble in that world for a little bit. And I think it was a great training ground to be part of. But, standalone restaurants are hard work, and hotels are also hard work. But where I think hotels and specifically Accor can give great careers is, I've worked across multiple countries now, and just the opportunities are endless. I mean, you could start working in Sydney, you could then work in Melbourne, you could go to Perth, you could go to Singapore, and that's just in one business. So I think from a career progression perspective, if you want to travel, travel the world is one of the best industries to be in. But I also think, of course, the current situation and, the lots of media around harassment and, different elements to the restaurant industry right now. I think at Accor we have very strong culture, and I think it's a safe space to come and work. I mean, of course, there's many different aspects to this, but I think it's a really great place to come and work as a young chef or a young waiter or waitress. And we have very structured career progression and pathways through that. I mean, one thing we've just launched, which I'm proud about, is our new Women in Food community. And I think for me, it was around, we didn't have enough females in economy leadership positions. So we've started this community to really spotlight how to progress as a female in a economy role, and just really just bringing our female leaders together and letting them collaborate on different ideas and support each other to progress is one thing I'm proud about. But I mean, I think, the other good thing is, to my point at the beginning, is, we now in hotels do have great restaurants and do have great coffee shops and great bars, working with some of the best in the world. So for me now, it is a really credible career to jump in.
Ben, what do you love about what you do?
That's a great question. I think so many things. I mean, I've always loved food, and for me, my passion is being around food and people the whole time. So I absolutely love working with different people around the world, specifically across Asia Pacific. The cultures that food brings together is just, outstanding. And I think having the opportunity to work and collaborate with people with so many diverse ambitions, viewpoints, cuisines is inspiring. Sometimes challenging. It's not easy to go in and always work at scale in different cultural environments, but I think it's just being close to people and close to food.
I love it. Being close to food is my happy place as well. Ben, thank you very much for sharing with us today. So interesting to hear about what you're doing and learn of the opportunities in the Accor ecosystem. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Dani. Great to see you.
This is Dirty Linen. I'm Dani Valent. We bring you untold stories from the food world. Real, raw, unafraid, hopeful. We're driven by a belief that food provides endless opportunities for learning, connecting, and creating the world we want to live in. Delicious, open-hearted, meaningful. If you know a story that needs telling, get in touch. Write to dirtylinen@deepintheweeds.com.au. Thank you for listening.
This is a Deep in the Weeds production.